اللهم صل على محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأجساد وشفائها ونور الأبصار وجلائها وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم.
بسم الله أوله وآخره. Our first question is one which has been answered several times in the past. But there are a large number of people who do not have the time to go searching for the answers. And so they constantly write to me wanting an answer. Sheikh, didn't you study geography? You said that when Dajjal was released in a day which is like a year, he was released in the island of Tamim ad-Dari, and you say that that island is Britain. But the Prophet ﷺ pointed 20 times to the east. That Dajjal will come from the east, and Sheikh, Britain is in the west. Didn't you study geography? So this question is being posed again and again, even though I did give a response to it. So I guess I'm going to just have to keep on repeating the answer again and again, my answer, of course. But let me say one more time, I don't know how many times I must say it, that whenever I give an opinion, whenever I express my view, whenever I interpret, I don't want you to accept my opinion. I don't want you to accept my view. I do not want you to accept my interpretation unless and until you are convinced that it is correct. Those are dangerous students who will accept everything that I say without first critically examining. And you must also listen to the views of my critics, people who have different opinions from me. And when you have studied the subject and you are convinced that I am correct, only then should you accept my view. So now let's turn to the hadith of Tamim ad-Dari, which is in Sahih Muslim, in which the Prophet ﷺ said that when Dajjal is released, he'll live on earth for 40 days. And the first thing we must recognize is 40 days does not always stand for 40 days as we know a day. 40 days do not always stand for 40 days as we know a day. That's the first thing you must learn. Someone asked the Prophet ﷺ, which was the first masjid to be built? He said the Kaaba. And then they asked which was the second masjid to be built. And he said, Masjid al-Aqsa, Jerusalem. And then he asked how many years or how much time elapsed between the two. He said 40 years. 40 years. But no, we know that the time which elapsed between the one built by Ibrahim alayhi salam and the one built by Sulaiman alayhi salam must have been 1,000 years or more. But he said 40 years. And so now we have to understand that sometimes these numbers are given. These numbers are given as figures of speech, not to be understood literally. Having said that, Dajjal will live on earth for 40 days. One day which will be like a year, one day which will be like a month, and one day which will be like a week. And the rest of his days like your days. So please don't tell me that you're going to take away 3 from 40 and come out 37, huh? and the rest of the days will be 37 days. Do not do that. We said that when he was released in a day which is like a year, the hadith of Tamim Ad-Dari is that he's going to be released on an island. If you say the island is in the Persian Gulf, or you say the island is in the Mediterranean Sea, or you say the island is Singapore, well then, what I expect of you is that you will back up your claim by providing the evidence to support your thesis that this is the island. I have offered my opinion that the island is Britain, and I have provided substantial evidence to support my claim that the island is Britain. But this is the release of Dajjal. Dajjal is in chains, and the chains are removed, so he is released. And I say that he was released in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. Otherwise, how could the Prophet ﷺ said that it is possible that Ibn Sayyad is Dajjal? How is it possible that the Prophet ﷺ could say that perhaps Ibn Sayyad, a Jewish boy in Medina, is Dajjal? Huh? He didn't say he is Dajjal. He did not say that. He said if he is Dajjal, then, and if he is not, then. So it's possible. The only way he can say that it is possible is if Dajjal is no longer in his chains. He's now been released. But the hadith also speak about the khuruj of Dajjal. And the khuruj is something else. The khuruj of Dajjal will take place after a certain number of events have taken place. For example, the hadith of Sahih Muslim, that there will first be the Umran of Baytul Maqdis, Jerusalem flourishing, or Baytul Maqdis flourishing, or Al-Quds flourishing, whichever name you want, meaning center stage in the world. And at that time, Yathrib or Medina is in a state of desolation, kharab. And then comes the next, and that is the khuruj of the Malhama, the Great War. And today we are at that point in time where Jerusalem is flourishing, Medina is a backwater, is a desolation, and now we are waiting for the Great War to start. That's where we are now. But the khuruj of the Malhama is going to lead to the Fathul Constantiniya. That Constantinople is going to be conquered after the Great War. So that is an event which is to come. And then after the Fathul Constantiniya, only then do you have the khuruj of Dajjal. So don't mix up the two. The khuruj of Dajjal is when he appears in human form. And at that time you'll see him as a Jew, and as a young man, and powerfully built, and curly hair. And I used to always think that this is curly hair, until a student of mine came from Egypt. And he pointed out to me, no, there's something in the Torah about wearing the curls at the side. And that is what the Prophet is talking about, the curls that the Orthodox Jews wear at the side of the face. That is the curls that Dajjal will have, not curly hair. And so it is when Dajjal khuruj comes, at that time he's going to come from the east. 20 times the Prophet pointed in the direction of the east. But his release and his khuruj are two different events. This one is Britain and that one is the east. And yes, Imran Hussein did study a little bit of geography in school. So I hope we have explained that subject. Our next question pertains to the hadith about the river Euphrates, that the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold, and that people will fight over that gold, and that 99 out of every 100 will be killed, and everyone will be saying, I hope I will be the one who will survive. But the Muslims must not touch that gold. And I have lectured on the subject and offered an opinion. And my opinion is that this is not to be understood literally. No. That we don't have to wait until the river dries up, and then from underneath the river will emerge a mountain of the metal. No. I'm saying that what is lying underneath the river in that entire basin is oil. And while there's oil in the North Sea, you don't have to remind me of that. And while there's oil in Nigeria, and while there's oil in Venezuela, and oil in the United States, and lots of oil in Russia, it is this oil, the one in the basin underneath the river Euphrates, this is the oil which is destined to function as gold. Gold has always been money. Money, dinar. And so the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is saying that a mountain of gold is going to emerge from the river Euphrates, meaning that the oil that is going to be discovered in that area is destined to function as gold. Not the North Sea oil, not the oil in Venezuela. You don't have to remind me that there's oil in Venezuela. I know that. It is this oil which is destined to function as gold. And that is why it was said a mountain of gold. And this is my opinion. Don't touch it. Oh, but gold is halal. Allah created gold as halal. Why should I not touch gold? Is there any sane reason? Any rational explanation for me not touching gold that Allah made halal? And there's a hadith that in Akhirul Zaman the earth is going to vomit. The earth is going to vomit from its liver columns of gold and silver. Why should I not touch that gold? No, it's not to be understood literally. What happened was that the Western world, the Zionist world, in search of achieving their ultimate objective of creating one world government that will rule over the whole of mankind, so that Dajjal could then rule over mankind from Israel. That's the strategy. To bring all of mankind together, globalization in a one world government. Decided about 100 years ago or more on a strategy involving money to bring all of mankind together through money into one world government. And so they began planning, and they created the Federal Reserve in the United States. They created the League of Nations and they created the United Nations as part of the strategy to create one world government. Why will you not understand that? So that Dajjal can rule the world. And at the heart of that strategy was a monetary system. A monetary system through which you will get all of mankind together. And that monetary system was formalized in a conference that took place in a place called Bretton Woods in upstate New York. And they brought the paper money into being, backed by gold, only the US dollar. Only the US dollar, backed by gold. And all the rest of the paper money in the world having no backing by gold. And even the US dollar is redeemable at $35 an ounce, but only governments can bring their dollars to Uncle Sam to have it redeemed into gold at $35 an ounce. But that was only window dressing. That was only dust in our eyes. And in 1971, I believe it was France that brought the money to ask the US dollar, the US government, to give us the gold. And the US government knew the game was up. It was a game of deception. The paper was bogus, it's fraudulent, it's haram. How many times must I say that? When will the scholars of Islam wake up and study the subject? If you study the subject, it's so easy to understand that the paper money that they brought to us was bogus, was fraudulent, was utterly haram. Why is it so difficult for them to understand it? But no, don't listen to Imran Hussein. No. In 1971, the United States had to renege on its obligations under Bretton Woods. So no, we're not going to redeem dollars for gold. And so now the US dollar could collapse. From the time there's any knock to the system and confidence is beginning to wane, the US dollar will lose value. So they had to think of something quick. And this is what they did. 1973 war between the Arabs and Israel. And there's quite some evidence of Zionist involvement in that war. And then there was the oil embargo that the Arabs imposed upon the United States. And then there was a deal between Henry Kissinger and King Faisal, which brought into being what is known as the petrodollar. The petrodollar. So no longer is the metal gold being used to back the paper. Now Faisal agrees. Faisal agrees without knowledge. He didn't have the knowledge, King Faisal rahimahullah, that Saudi Arabia will sell its oil for only US dollars. Haram. That's haram, that's haram, that's haram. Saudi Arabia will sell its oil only for US dollars. That's haram. And Saudi Arabia will get all the other oil producing Arab countries to agree to sell their oil for only dollars. That's haram, haram, haram. Nobody question it. No, nobody question it. And this agreement to sell oil for dollars, since oil is the largest commodity traded in the world market, established for the United States dollar a demand that allowed it to survive and flourish. And then the US dollar, the petrodollar, also became the trade dollar. You want to buy and sell any part of the world, you need dollars. The banking system is not going to accept other money. No. You're in Pakistan and you want to buy from India. The Pakistani who wants to buy from India has to buy with US dollars. An Indian who wants to buy from Pakistani has to buy from with US dollars. What's wrong with the Pakistani rupee and the Indian rupee trading? No. You got to buy the US, so you become the trading dollar. This is the hadith. This is the hadith, that the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. The Prophet ﷺ is referring to this. Don't touch it means we should not be touching this US dollar, and we should not touching the other paper money. This is my opinion, and it will not be long before we go in the grave and we know who is right and who is wrong. But those who insist on waiting for the mountain of gold to come out of the river, and I'm not speaking sarcastically about them, there's no need for them to respond to me with boxing gloves. In fact, it's too late for that now. They have the right to wait for the mountain of gold to come out of the river. The Prophet ﷺ prophesied that you will make an alliance with Rome in Akhir Zaman. But the hadith also speaks about war with Rome, and that they'll attack you under 80 flags and 1/3 of the army will run away and Allah will never forgive them, and 1/3 of the army would be killed and they'll be shuhada, the best shuhada, and the last 1/3 will be victorious against Rome. And we are puzzled. How can we make an alliance with the people who are going to fight against us? That's the question. In answer to that question, I want to point out that Rome began as a city in Italy, the city of Rome, which was a pagan city, which worshipped idols and Greek gods and goddesses. That was Rome. Today that Rome is Western European Christians. That Rome has the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. Today that Rome has a NATO alliance. Today that Rome is modern Western civilization from its pagan origins. And then when Christianity came to Rome, an emperor emerged whose name was Constantine. And he took Rome out of Rome and established the city that came to be known as Constantinople. And this became the second Rome. This second Rome was otherwise known as the Byzantine Empire. And it was in rivalry with the Persian Empire. And when the Quran declared Ghulibatir Rum, the Quran was referring to this second Rome, not the first, the second one, which had been defeated by Persia. But the tables will soon turn, says the Quran, in a few years, bid'a sinin. And the Byzantine Empire will defeat the Persians, and that's what happened. So when the Quran used the word Rome, it was referring to Rome number 2, or Byzantium. And when the Ottoman Sultan Muhammad Fatih conquered Constantinople in 1456, I believe, almost 600 years ago. Then Rome left Constantinople, and Rome is now located in Russia. It is not for us Muslims to decide where Rome is today. How foolish of us. it is they, the Orthodox Christians, the Eastern Orthodox Christians, they are the ones who have to answer the question, where's Rome today? Not us. And their answer, and the Patriarch says, it is Moscow. And so we have three rooms. The first room, which today has NATO and Western civilization, and is waging war on Islam on Israel's behalf. And we have the second room, which was Byzantium, and we have the third room, which is now in Moscow. And the Prophet ﷺ speaks about an alliance with Rome. My opinion is, he's not talking about NATO. No. He cannot be talking about NATO and the West, and the United States and Britain and France and so on. What nonsense. Because Western civilization has an alliance of Christians with Jews. And in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah prohibits us from an alliance with such Christians and such Jews who are allies of each other. بَعْدُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. So the alliance with Rome could not be NATO or Rome number one. The alliance with Rome cannot be number two, because number two is gone. It's gone. Istanbul is now a Muslim city. The alliance with Rome, in my opinion, has to be number three, Moscow and Eastern Europe. And I want to suggest to you that the attack from Rome is not from Russia. And that attack is coming, and it is from NATO. And they'll come with under 80 flags. It's the alliance with which they have attacked Afghanistan. And they're now preparing to attack Syria, and to attack Iran, and to attack Pakistan, and to attack Egypt. And Russia is not preparing to launch those wars, that malhama. It is NATO which is preparing to launch that malhama under 80 flags. And so there is no conflict here, that the alliance with Rome is an alliance with the same people who are going to be attacking us under 80 flags. No, I believe there is a confusion here, and these are two different Romes. It's Rome number one, which is today NATO, and Rome number three, which is Byzantium. We don't have any more time for any more questions, so let's take a little break, and then we will invite you to ask your questions. We now have another question from a student who is sitting here with me from Switzerland. And he questions the hadith about the army which will come from Khorasan, which will have its black flags, and that army will conquer every territory in a straight line until it reaches Alia. Alia is the Roman name for Jerusalem. Baytul Maqdis is the Arabic name for Jerusalem. There are some who hold the view that this hadith is a weak or daif hadith. But it will be very interesting if someone will do a research work on all the hadiths which are considered to be daif, to examine to what extent do these hadiths which are considered to be daif are in harmony with the Quran, and are in harmony with the body of other hadiths on the subject. Okay? When we look at Khorasan, we see that it is the one part of the world of Islam which has never been conquered by the West. Never. Modern Western civilization tried to conquer Afghanistan, but failed. The British tried, and they failed. The Russians tried, they failed. And now guess who is trying? And they're failing. This is evidence on the ground that there is something special, something unique about Khorasan. So you can say hadith is da'if or not, that's up to you. The fact is that the evidence on the ground is compelling that this is the one part of the world of Islam which has not as yet been colonized, cannot be colonized, and is unafraid to resist oppression. Afghanistan has fought, and fought brilliantly, without any PhDs from Oxford and Yale and Stanford and Harvard. No. Afghanistan has fought and fought brilliantly. Thank God without any banks. Had there been banking system in Afghanistan, they would have been enslaved already. The Afghans don't wear black ties and black suits. No. The Afghans don't shave their beards. No. You don't see Afghan women in bikinis. No. Afghanistan has not become a copycat of the modern West. And so it is quite possible that this hadith is going to be fulfilled one day, although some say daif, and that an army is going to come out of Afghanistan because the evidence is compelling. The mightiest military force in the world today is NATO. And NATO has had 10 years with Afghanistan, the poorest country in the world. And NATO has not as yet succeeded in subduing Afghanistan. The Afghans are still fighting. And so I say the evidence is compelling, daif or no daif, that an army is already fighting in Afghanistan and in Khorasan, and that that army is destined to liberate Jerusalem. And I believe that that event is not too far from now. Perhaps another 20, 25 years. But before I end, the Prophet ﷺ said that it is only at that time when those who have faith in their hearts long for death. There's nothing dearer to me in the world than to die, because the conditions in the world are so horrible that they long to leave this world. It is only at that time that the khuruj of Dajjal will take place. Only at that time. And so we have a lot of oppression staring us in years to come. And those who are showing the best possible evidence of courage in standing up and fighting back are the people of Khorasan. Next question.
ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي التوبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم إلهي أعلى ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa neraka-Mu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurga-Mu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa neraka-Mu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar.